Admiral Byrd, our guest tonight, is not only our greatest living explorer, but he's been an inspiration to countless Americans. Admiral Byrd, you've been to both the North Pole and the South Pole. Is there any unexplored land left on this earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
That's a tremendous
So
challenge.
there's a lot of adventure left down at the bottom of the world.
Admiral, do you hope to see that?
I do.
The theory of a hollow Earth was first worked out by American writer William Reed in 1906, and later extended by another American, Marshall B. Gardner, in 1920. In 1959, F. Amadeo Gianni wrote the first book on the subject since Gardner's, and in the same year, Ray Palmer, editor of Flying Saucers magazine, applied the theory to provide a logical explanation for the origin of the flying saucers. The theories of Reed and Gardner found confirmation in the Arctic and Antarctic expeditions of Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd in 1947 and 1956 respectively, which penetrated the 1,700 miles beyond the North Pole and 2,300 miles beyond the South Pole into new unknown iceless territory not recorded on a map. December 1929, the memorable December. 12th discovery of heretofore unknown land beyond the South Pole by Captain Sir George Hubert Wilkins demands that science change the concept it has had for the past 400 years concerning the southern contour of the Earth. February 1947. I'd like to see that land beyond the North Pole. The area beyond the pole is the center of the great unknown. Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, United States Navy, before his 7-hour flight of 1,700 miles beyond the North Pole. November 1955. This is the most important expedition in the history of the world. Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, before departing to explore land beyond the South Pole. January 1956. On January the 13th, members of the United States expedition accomplished a flight of 2,700 miles from the base at McMurdo Sound, which is 400 miles west of the South Pole, and penetrated a land extent of 2,300 miles beyond the pole. Radio announcement from Byrd's Antarctic expedition confirmed by the American press of February the 5th, 1956. The true significance of Admiral Byrd's great discoveries was hushed up soon after he sent his radio report from his plane, and was not given the attention it deserves until Gianni and Palmer publicized the matter. One of the greatest geographical discoveries in history, far greater than Columbus's discovery of America. For while Columbus discovered a new continent, Byrd discovered a new world with a land area equal or greater to that of the entire land surface of the Earth. Admiral Byrd's discovery is today a leading international top secret, and it has been so since it was first made in 1947. After Byrd made his radio announcement from his plane, and after a brief press notice, all subsequent news on the subject was carefully suppressed by government agencies. There was an important reason for this. Before he left on his 7-hour flight from his Arctic base over iceless land beyond the North Pole, leading to the interior of the Earth, Admiral Byrd said, "I would like to see that land beyond the pole. That area beyond the pole is the center of the great unknown." Admiral Byrd did not cross over the North Pole and travel 1,700 miles south on its other side. If he did, he would enter icebound territory. Instead, he entered a land with a warmer climate, free from ice and snow, consisting of forests, mountains, lakes, green vegetation and animal life. This new unknown land, over which he flew for 1,700 miles, which was not on any map, existed inside the polar opening, leading to the hollow interior of the Earth, where it is warmer than on the outside, which is here a land of ice and snow. Why then did not the United States send new air expeditions to the land discovered by Admiral Byrd, in an effort to fully explore it and determine its extent? Why was such an important discovery completely forgotten? It is like Columbus discovering America and then nothing further being done about it, and no subsequent trips of exploration to the western continent made by Europeans. Why the apathy? The explanation is evident. If Admiral Byrd made such a momentous discovery, undoubtedly the greatest one in history, of a new unknown land area of undetermined extent, over which his expedition flew for a total of 4,000 miles at each pole, and which area is probably as wide as it is long, and, since Byrd returned back before reaching its end, is probably much larger than an area 4,000 miles square, then it would be in the interest of the US government to keep this discovery secret, so that other nations do not learn about it and claim this territory for themselves. It seems that news of Admiral Byrd's great discovery did not reach the Soviet Union, or else the Soviet Union knows about this new land area not contained on any map, but has adopted the same policy of silence and secrecy. If the Soviet Union knew about the discovery, it would surely send fleets of atomic-powered submarines, icebreakers and airplanes into this unknown territory beyond the pole, and be the first to explore it and claim it for its own. To prevent this was probably the reason why the news about Admiral Byrd's great discovery was hushed and suppressed ever since it was first released. However, since the secret has already been released and broadcast by Gianni, Palmer and others, and is public knowledge, it can no longer be properly called a secret. The above two statements by the greatest explorer in modern times, Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd of the United States Navy, cannot be understood nor make any sense according to old geographical theories that the Earth is a solid sphere with a fiery core, on which both north and south poles are fixed points. If such was the case, and if Admiral Byrd flew for 1,700 and 2,300 miles respectively across north and south poles to the icy and snowbound lands that lie on the other side, whose geography is fairly well known, it would be incomprehensible for him to make such a statement, referring to this territory on the other side of the poles as the Great Unknown. Also, he would have no reason to use such a term as Land of Everlasting Mystery. Byrd was not a poet, and what he described was what he observed from his airplane. During his Arctic flight of 1,700 miles beyond the North Pole, he reported by radio that he saw below him not ice and snow, but land areas consisting of mountains, forests, green vegetation, lakes and rivers, and in the underbrush saw a strange animal resembling the mammoth found frozen in Arctic ice. Evidently, he had entered a warmer region than the icebound territory that extends from the pole to Siberia. If Byrd had this region in mind, he would have no reason to call it the Great Unknown, since it could be reached by flying across the pole to the other side of the Arctic region. The only way we can understand Byrd's enigmatic statements is if we discard the traditional conception of the formation of the Earth and entertain an entirely new one, according to which its Arctic and Antarctic extremities are not convex but concave, and that Byrd entered into the polar concavities where he went beyond the poles. In other words, he did not travel across the poles to the other side, but entered into the polar concavity or depression, which opens to the hollow interior of the Earth, the home of the plant, animal and human life enjoying a tropical climate. This is the Great Unknown to which Byrd had reference when he made this statement, and not the ice and snowbound area on the other side of the North Pole, extending to the upper reaches of Siberia. In February 1947, about the time when Admiral Byrd made his great discovery of land beyond the North Pole, another remarkable discovery was made in the continent of Antarctica, the discovery of Bunga's Oasis. This discovery was made by Lieutenant Commander David Bunga, who was at the controls of one of 6 large transport planes used by Admiral Byrd for the US Navy's Operation High Jump, 1946 to 1947. Bunga was flying inland from the Shackleton ice shelf near Queen Mary coast of Wilkes Land. He and his crew were about 4 miles from the coastline where open water lies. The land Bunga discovered was ice-free. The lakes were of many different colours, ranging from rusty red, green to deep blue. Each of the lakes was more than 3 miles long. The water was warmer than the ocean, as Bunga found by landing his seaplane on one of the lakes. Each lake had a gently sloping beach. Around the 4 edges of the oasis, which was roughly square in shape, Bunga saw endless and eternal white snow and ice. 2 sides of the oasis rose nearly 100 feet high and consisted of great ice walls. The other 2 sides had a more gradual and gentle slope. The existence of such an oasis in the far Antarctic, a land of perpetual ice, would indicate warmer conditions there, which would exist if the oasis was in the South Polar opening, leading to the warmer interior of the Earth, as was the case with the warmer territory, with land and lakes, that Admiral Byrd discovered beyond the North Pole, which was probably within the polar opening. Otherwise, one cannot explain the existence of such an oasis of unfrozen territory in the midst of the continent of Antarctica, with ice miles thick. The oasis could not result from volcanic activity below the Earth's surface, for, since the land area of the oasis covered 300 square miles, it was too big to be affected by volcanic heat supply. Warm wind currents from the Earth's interior are a better explanation. Thus Byrd in the Arctic and Bunga in the Antarctic both made similar discoveries of warmer land areas beyond the poles at about the same time, early in 1947. But they were not the only ones to make such a discovery. Some time ago, a newspaper in Toronto, Canada, the Globe and Mail, published a photo of a green valley taken by an aviator in the Arctic region. Evidently, the aviator took the picture from the air and did not attempt to land. It was a beautiful valley and contained rolling green hills. The aviator must have gone beyond the North Pole into the same warmer territory that Admiral Byrd visited, which lies inside the polar opening. This picture was published in 1960. In further confirmation of Admiral Byrd's discovery are reports of individuals who claimed that they had entered the North Polar opening, as many Arctic explorers did, without knowing they did, and penetrated far enough into it to reach the subterranean world in the hollow interior of the Earth. Dr. Nephi Cottom of Los Angeles reported that one of his patients, a man of Nordic descent, told him the following story. "I lived near the Arctic Circle in Norway. One summer, my friend and I made up our minds to take a boat trip together and go as far as we could into the North Country. So we put 1 month's food provisions in a small fishing boat, and with sail and also a good engine in our boat, we set to sea. At the end of 1 month, we had travelled far into the north, beyond the pole, and into a strange new country. We were much astonished at the weather there, warm, and at times at night it was almost too warm to sleep. Arctic explorers who penetrated into the far north have made similar reports of warm weather, at times warm enough to make them shed their heavy clothing. Then we saw something so strange that we both were astonished. Ahead of the warm open sea, we were on what looked like a great mountain. Into that mountain at a certain point, the ocean seemed to be emptying. Mystified, we continued in that direction, and found ourselves sailing into a vast canyon leading into the interior of the Earth. We kept sailing, and then we saw what surprised us: a sun shining inside the Earth. The ocean that had carried us into the hollow interior of the Earth gradually became a river. This river led, as we came to realize later, all through the inner surface of the world, from one end to the other. It can take you, if you follow it long enough, from the North Pole clear through to the South Pole. We saw that the inner surface of the Earth was divided, as the other one is, into both land and water. There is plenty of sunshine, and both animal and vegetable life abounds there. We sailed further and further into this fantastic country. Fantastic because everything was huge in size, as compared with things on the outside. Plants are big, trees are gigantic, and finally we came to giants. They were dwelling in homes and towns, just as we do on the Earth's surface, and they used a type of electrical conveyance like a monorail car to transport people. It ran along the river's edge from town to town. Several of the inner Earth inhabitants, huge giants, detected our boat on the river and were quite amazed. They were, however, quite friendly. We were invited to dine with them in their homes, and so my companion and I separated, he going with one giant to that giant's home, and I going with another giant to his home. My gigantic friend brought me home to his family, and I was completely dismayed to see the huge size of all the objects in his home. The dinner table was colossal. A plate was put before me and filled with a portion of food so big it would have fed me abundantly an entire week. The giant offered me a cluster of grapes, and each grape was as big as one of our peaches. I tasted one and found it far sweeter than any I had ever tasted outside. In the interior of the Earth, all the fruits and vegetables taste far better and more flavoursome than those we have on the outer surface of the Earth. We stayed with the giants for 1 year, enjoying their companionship as much as they enjoyed knowing us. We observed many strange and unusual things during our visit with these remarkable people, and were continually amazed at their scientific progress and inventions. All of this time, they were never unfriendly to us, and we were allowed to return to our own home in the same manner in which we came. In fact, they courteously offered their protection if we should need it for the return voyage. These giants were evidently members of the antediluvian race of Atlanteans who established residence in the Earth's interior prior to the historic deluge that submerged their Atlantic continent. A similar experience of a visit to the hollow interior of the Earth through the polar opening, and entirely independently, was made by another Norwegian named Olaf Jansen and recorded in the book The Smoky God, written by Willis George Emerson, an American writer. The book is based on a report made by Jansen to Mr. Emerson before his death, describing his real experience of visiting the interior of the Earth and its inhabitants. The title, The Smoky God, refers to the central sun in the hollow interior of the Earth, which, being smaller and less brilliant than our sun, appears as smoky. The book relates to the true experience of a Norse father and his son, who, with their small fishing boat and unbounded courage, attempted to find the land beyond the north wind, as they had heard of its warmth and beauty. An extraordinary windstorm carried them most of the distance through the polar opening into the hollow interior of the Earth. They spent 2 years there and returned through the South Polar opening. The father lost his life when an iceberg broke in two and destroyed the boat. The son was rescued and subsequently spent 24 years in prison for insanity as a result of telling the story of his experience to incredulous people. When he was finally released, he told the story to no one. After 26 years as a fisherman, he saved enough money to come to the United States and settled in Illinois and later in California. In his 90s, by accident, the novelist Willis George Emerson befriended him and was told the story. On the old man's death, he relinquished the maps that he had made of the interior of the earth and the manuscript describing his experiences. He refused to show it to anyone while he was alive, due to his past experience of people disbelieving him and considering him insane if he mentioned the subject. The book The Smoky God, describing Olaf Jansson's unusual trip to the hollow interior of the earth, was published in 1908. It tells about the people who dwell inside the earth, whom he and his father met during their visit and whose language he learned. He said that they lived from 400 to 800 years and are highly advanced in science. They can transmit their thoughts from one to another by certain types of radiations and have sources of power greater than our electricity. They are the creators of the flying saucers, which are operated by this superior power drawn from the electromagnetism of the atmosphere. They are 12 or more feet in stature. It is remarkable how this report of a visit to the Earth's interior corresponds with the other described above, yet both were entirely independent of each other. Also, the gigantic size of the human beings dwelling in the Earth's interior corresponds to the great size of its animal life, as observed by Admiral Byrd, who, during his 1,700-mile flight beyond the North Pole, observed a strange animal resembling the ancient mammoth. Before Columbus discovered America, belief in the existence of a new world across the Atlantic, in the form of a western continent, was considered as the dream of a madman. Equally strange, in our own time, is the belief of the existence of a new world, a subterranean world, in the hollow interior of the earth, and which is as unknown to present humanity as the American continent was to Europeans prior to its discovery by Columbus. Yet there is no reason why it, too, may not be discovered and its existence established as a fact. Arnoldo de Azevedo, in his Physical Geography, wrote as follows about the mysterious world below our feet, concerning which scientists know nothing beyond a few miles in profundity, entertaining only theories, hypotheses, and conjectures to hide their ignorance. We have below our feet an immense region whose radius is 6,290 kilometers, which is completely unknown, challenging the conceit and competence of scientists. This statement is absolutely true. Scientists to date have penetrated only a few miles inside the Earth, and what lies further down they may know nothing about, depending only on conjectures, guesses, and suppositions. Many of the commonly accepted theories and beliefs about the Earth's interior do not rest on any scientific basis, and seem to originate in the old ecclesiastical idea of hellfire in the center of the Earth, which is so much like the belief of scientists that the core of the Earth is a mass of fire and molten metal, yet the scientific belief rests on no more positive evidence than the religious one. Both are merely suppositions without an iota of proof. The belief in the Earth having a fiery center probably arose from the fact that the deeper one penetrates into the Earth, the warmer it gets, but it is a far-fetched assumption to suppose that this increase of temperature continues until the center of the Earth. There is no evidence to support this view. It is more probable that the increase of temperature continues only until we reach the level where volcanic lava and earthquakes originate, probably due to the existence of much radioactive substances there. But after we pass through this layer of maximum heat, there is no reason why it should not get cooler and cooler as we get nearer and nearer to the Earth's center. The total surface of the Earth is 197 million square miles, and its estimated weight is 6 sextillion tons. If the Earth was a solid sphere, its weight would be much greater. There is one among other scientific evidences of the fact that the Earth has a hollow interior. The author believes that the truest conception of the structure of the Earth is based upon the idea that when it was in a molten state during its formulation, centrifugal force caused the heavier substances to be thrown outward towards its periphery in the form of rocks and metals to form its outer crust, leaving its interior hollow with openings at the poles. where the centrifugal force was less, and where there was less tendency to throw materials outward, which was greater at the equator, causing the bulging of the Earth in this region. It has been estimated that as a result of the Earth's rotation on its axis during its formative state, polar depressions and openings thus formed would measure about 1,400 miles in diameter. Also, we shall present evidence to indicate that some of the original fire and incandescent materials remained in the center of the Earth to form a central sun, much smaller, of course, than our sun, but capable of emitting light and supporting plant growth. We shall also see that the aurora borealis, or streamlights that illuminate the Arctic sky at night, come from this central sun, whose rays shine through the polar opening. Thus, if the Earth was originally a ball of fire and molten metal, some of this fire remained in its center, while centrifugal force, as a result of its rotation on its axis, caused its solid matter to be thrown toward the surface, forming a solid crust and leaving its interior hollow, with a fiery ball at its center, forming the central sun, which provides illumination for plant, animal, and human life. The first one to present the theory of the Earth being hollow, with openings at its poles, was an American thinker, William Reed, author of the book Phantom of the Poles, published in 1906. This book provides the first compilation of scientific evidence based on the reports of Arctic explorers in support of the theory that the Earth is hollow with openings at its poles. Reed estimates that the crust of the Earth has a thickness of 800 miles, while its hollow interior has a diameter of 6,400 miles. Reed summarizes his revolutionary theory as follows. The Earth is hollow. The poles, so long sought, are phantoms. There are openings at the northern and southern extremities. In the interior are vast continents, oceans, mountains and rivers. Vegetable and animal life are evident in this new world, and it is probably peopled by races unknown to dwellers on the Earth's surface. Reed pointed out that the Earth is not a true sphere, but is flattened at the poles, or rather, it begins to flatten out as one approaches the hypothetical North and South Pole, which really do not exist, because the openings to its hollow interior occur there. Hence the poles are really in mid-air, in the center of the polar openings, and are not on its surface, as would-be discoverers of the poles suppose. Reed claims that the poles cannot be discovered because the Earth is hollow at its pole points, which exist in mid-air, due to the existence there of polar openings leading to its interior. When explorers thought they reached the pole, they were misled by the eccentric behavior of the compass in high latitudes, north and south. Reed claims that this happened in the case of Peary and Cook, neither of whom really reached the North Pole. Starting at 70 to 75 degrees north and south latitude, the Earth starts to curve in. The pole is simply the outer rim of a magnetic circle around the polar opening. The North Magnetic Pole, once thought to be a point in the Arctic archipelago, has been lately shown by Soviet Arctic explorers to be a line approximately 1,000 miles long. However, as we stated above, instead of being a straight line, it really is a circular line constituting the rim of the polar opening. When an explorer reaches this rim, he has reached the North Magnetic Pole, and though the compass will always point to it after one passes it, it is really not the North Pole, even if one is deluded into thinking it is, or that he has discovered the pole due to having been misled by his compass. When one reaches this magnetic circle, the rim of the polar opening, the magnetic needle of the compass points straight down. This has been observed by many Arctic explorers who, after reaching high latitudes, near to 90 degrees, were dumbfounded by the inexplicable action of the compass and its tendency to point vertically upward. They were then inside the polar opening, and the compass pointed to the Earth's North Magnetic Pole, which was along the rim of this opening. As the Earth turns on its axis, the motion is gyroscopic, like the spinning of a top. The outer gyroscopic pole is the magnetic circle of the rim of the polar opening. Beyond the rim, the Earth flattens and slopes gradually towards its hollow interior. The true pole is the exact center of the opening at the poles, which, consequently, do not really exist. And those who claim to have discovered them did not tell the truth, even if they thought they did. Having been misled by the irregular action of the compass at high latitudes, for this reason neither Cook nor Peary nor any other explorer ever reached the North or South Poles, and never will.